All right, good morning. Today we're going to talk about OSHA investigations. So for the agenda, we're going to talk about the different types of OSHA investigations or inspections. I kind of use the two interchangeably. 11 steps for an OSHA inspection, OSHA penalties, some tips, and then we'll wrap it up. So inspections, investigations, and record keeping. So this is the a portion of the OSHA Act, the OSHA law. So in order to carry out the purposes of this act, the secretary, upon presenting appropriate credentials to the owner, operator, or agent in charge, is authorized to enter without delay at reasonable times any factory, plant, establishment, construction site, or other area, workplace, or environment where work is performed by an employee of an employer, and to inspect and investigate during regular working hours and at other reasonable times and within reasonable limits and in a reasonable manner any such place of employment and all pertinent conditions, structures, machines, apparatuses, devices, equipment, and materials therein, and to question privately any such employer, owner, operator, agent, or employee. So this is what gives OSHA the authority to do an inspection at your workplace. So different types of inspections are fatality. It must be reported to the North Carolina DOL within 8 hours. A serious injury, it must be reported to the NCDOL within 24 hours. These are amputations, so it includes fingertips with or without bone loss, loss of eye, which is a complete loss of the eye, an inpatient hospitalization with care or treatment. So this is somebody that's being admitted to the hospital, but it wouldn't necessarily mean somebody that's spent all night in the ER going through diagnostic testing. Some more types of OSHA inspections: employee complaints. The OSHA Act allows employees or their representatives to report safety, and they may be anonymous. So you have your unions, an attorney, clergy, spouse, social worker, and other family members. A lot of people can anonymously report a complaint or make a complaint to OSHA. So a couple more types of OSHA inspections. We have a referral from another agency, a follow-up inspection, a programmed inspection, a random inspection, and then a DART inspection. So DART is days away from work, restricted or transferred job duties. So typically the compliance officer is going to request the last 3 to 5 years of the OSHA 300 log. They're going to want the summary as well as the detailed log, and they're going to compare the industry DART rate. So this is a calculation based on the number of injuries and hours worked compared to the industry average. So it's the number of recordable injuries times 200,000 divided by the number of business hours worked. And if you are well beyond the industry average, it may open up a reason for OSHA to come and do an inspection or an investigation in your business. So when OSHA shows up at your business, 11 steps. We're going to go through these, but I'll just read them off. So restrict admittance until management personnel are on site. Determine the reason for the inspection. Obtain a copy of the complaint. You want to distinguish whether inspection is related to safety or is it industrial hygienist that's coming in. Identify whistleblower protection inspections. Designate an employee representative. Limit the scope of an inspection if possible. Have injury and illness logs ready for review. Take the same photographs or videos. Have company representatives present during interviews with management. And also we'll talk about debriefing your employees after interviews, and verifying trade secrets during the opening and closing conference. So the first one is restrict admittance until management is on site. You never want to allow the opening conference or the inspection process to commence until the appropriate pre-established management persons are present. So typically, an inspector will give you some time for those people to arrive if it's reasonable. So it also depends on the mood of the inspector and what they think is reasonable. And you also want to establish some procedures for your receptionist or your facility guards in the event a compliance officer appears on site. The next is you need to determine the reason for the inspections. Is it a complaint-based inspection? Did you have a fatality? Because OSHA is going to be there pretty quick. Is it a targeted inspection? So is it something that OSHA is a certain type of industry, or could it be a fall protection program that they're really looking at? Is it a media-based inspection? So this could be from something that was on the news, or is it just a random inspection? So determine that reason. Obtain a copy of the complaint. So most inspections are a result of employee complaints. A lot of them are, and even a lot of phone calls from a compliance officer could be because of a complaint, and they could start out with an initial phone call to try to gather some information and verify the complaint. The compliance officer or inspector should provide the employer with a copy of the specific complaints. So the employee's name will not appear on the document. Do not comment about the reason for the complaint or about the party who have made the complaint. So there are whistleblower protections, and it is against the law to target, if you find out who made the complaint, to reduce their work hours or to mistreat them. You can't do that with somebody that's made a complaint. Employees who have registered safety complaints or instituted any proceedings under the OSHA Act are protected from discrimination or retaliation by the employer. So next you need to distinguish whether the inspection is related to safety or is it industrial hygiene. So are they going to be looking at air samples, or are they going to be looking at machine guarding? So if the OSHA officer is a safety specialist or compliance officer, the inspector, they will not conduct hygiene samplings. So if it is a industrial hygienist, it is likely that the inspection will focus on things like noise, air, silica sampling, different things like that. If it's possible, perform a simultaneous sample to verify OSHA results. This is not an option for most smaller businesses, even large businesses. But if you feel like there was something going on that may have been out of the ordinary, you can definitely hire your own industrial hygienist to come in and take some samples so that you do have some comparable results if you can replicate a very similar situation in which they were doing the sampling, especially if you're in a fixed-based facility. That's to your advantage to do that. Designate an employee representative. So OSHA inspectors are required to ask for the participation of an employee representative. If you are a union, the union safety chairman, shop steward, or other union official will also be asked to participate. If you are not organized with the union, the employer may choose to have an employee representative participate if there is a employee safety committee or you have designated an employee for such situations. You want to limit the scope of the inspection. So define the areas that the inspector will need to see and confine the visit to those areas or departments. You definitely don't want to offer a plant tour or a job site tour to the OSHA inspector. You want to keep their focus on what they came for, because anything that they see while they're walking through your facility or your job site, they can cite you for as they walk past it. So if they see a major violation that's occurring right in front of them, they will cite you for that. So you want them to go to exactly where the inspection is supposed to go to. In other words, whatever is in that complaint or whatever is in your in their paperwork, you want to limit the amount of things that they're seeing. For most inspections, escort the compliance officer to the targeted areas via a route where he or she is less likely to notice safety violations, even if it involves walking outdoors. So if what they're wanting to see is in the very back of your building, you can take them outside all the way down the side and bring them back into the back door. Maintain records. So inspectors will routinely review the current and prior 3 years illness logs, and annual summaries of injuries. So this is your OSHA 300 logs. They will check to ensure that the OSHA poster is in place, as well as for the following. These are just some of the programs: your HAZCOM, logout, tagout, emergency evacuation, bloodborne pathogens, if you have forklifts, and anything else that may apply to your operations. This is North Carolina's Department of Labor required posters. These are free. You can get these off the NCDOL website. You just have to place an order for them, but you can get these posters for free from the NCDOL. All right, so take photographs and videos. OSHA inspectors are instructed to take photographs or create videos or DVDs to document any safety violations. Most employers allow photographs unless there is a trade secret or a security issue. Companies should have cameras available and should take photographs or videos of the same items as OSHA. And this is something that's routine, so you shouldn't feel awkward doing this. Whatever they take a picture of, you should take a picture of as well. Debrief employees following interviews. So OSHA will ask to conduct employee interviews in private during the inspection. Company representatives may be present in any interviews with management employees. So this is your foreman through a plant manager. You should debrief hourly employees after their OSHA interviews in an effort to determine the scope of the questioning. This also enables you to prepare other employees prior to their OSHA interviews. So one thing you definitely want to make sure that your employees understand is they need to tell the truth. That is crucial. They're not going to get in trouble for telling the truth. That's what ultimately everybody wants is the truth, so that OSHA has a good understanding of what's going on. So make sure that they are truthful in their interview process. Protect trade secrets. OSHA is required to protect the confidentiality of any items which are asserted to be trade secrets. So verification of trade secrets should be done at the opening conference, and also a follow-up letter asserting the trade secret nature of the processes of workplace should be sent to the OSHA area director once you have your closing conference, to be sure that they have that information. All right, so the closing conference. OSHA inspectors are required to conduct a closing conference that immediately may follow after a very simple inspection, or may follow a major inspection by several weeks. So if they're coming in for the day, they're there for an hour or two, you're going to have your closing conference right there. If it is a much larger investigation that may be multiple job sites, that closing conference may happen a couple weeks after they finish the actual investigation. So industrial hygiene inspection closing conferences generally are delayed because they have to get the results of the testing. The closing conference is an opportunity to promote the company's safety programs and commitment to safety and health. This is definitely a factor OSHA considers in establishing the penalty amounts. So be a good listener and take notes on all of the specific alleged violations identified by the compliance officer. And the closing conference is not the time for employers to debate or argue possible citations with the compliance officer. This can be done next, in the next phase, but the closing conference is definitely not the time to get into, a debate with the officer. This is a time that you can start discussing abatements and what you're going to do to correct any issues that have been found during the investigation. But you don't want to discuss the citations, but you can start discussing your efforts for abatement. The informal conference. So employers may request an informal conference with the area director within 15 working days of the receipt of the citation. Attorneys sometimes participate, but this is not necessary. Sometimes I will be asked to be a part of these informal conferences, and it's always good to have a second set of ears and a second set of eyes, and somebody that has experience with these informal conferences. So some advantages of the informal conference. There's possible penalty reduction, possible deletion or reclassification of citations, possible extension of abatement dates, and there's also another meeting for the discovery of more facts if you are going to contest the citation. So you may have found So several different things have happened that were not known at the time, and you can bring these items up at that time. But for most companies, the informal conference is the time that they want to discuss a penalty reduction. So now moving on to some things that the North Carolina OSHA provides, and it is the consultative services or consultative services. So the Consultative Services Bureau helps employers in both the private and public sectors. In the private sector, consultation is limited to employers who have 500 or fewer employees nationwide. The Bureau's main focus is to help the small business employer, small employers with hazardous operations, or employers in high hazard industries. This is the OSHA voluntary program. A lot of people will, and a lot of companies I've worked with, when I've suggested it, they're blown away that why would you invite OSHA into your business? It's because you want to show a good faith effort. It also will take you off of the OSHA radar, so that, you know, if they have a scheduled visit for you or they're planning on scheduling a visit for you, it's going to take you off of that list. So it's a full service on-site safety and health surveys, and they tailor their request to whatever you need. So whatever you're looking for, they can help. They can provide technical assistance, safety and health program assessment and assistance, ergonomics evaluation assistance. They can do some air sampling and analysis for you. They can do some sound measuring, some noise measuring. If you're worried about the noise levels in your facility. But the one thing to keep in mind when you do this is the employer obligation. So under the agreement with the Consultative Services Bureau, the employer promises to correct within a reasonable time frame all hazards identified by the Bureau. So this, you're committing this in advance, and if you do fail to make those corrections or abate, those hazards, then they will fine you. So it gives you a chance to get ahead of the actual fine, because if OSHA does a scheduled inspection, comes in and finds these things, and discovers unsafe conditions, they're going to cite you for them. But when you do this under the voluntary program, they're going to find things, but they're going to give you a chance to fix those without penalizing you for those. But if you don't fix them, they will penalize you. So the 2019 OSHA maximum penalties, these are the most current that I have, and they have been adjusted for inflation. So a serious violation other than serious and posting requirements, they are the max penalty is $13,260 per violation. A failure to abate penalty is the same, and a willful or repeated violation is $132,598,000 per violation. So it can get very expensive if you are not providing a safe and healthful workplace. But to receive a max penalty, it's not very common, but this is what they can max you out on. So some of the penalty factors, penalties will be assessed on the following, or on the basics of the following factors. So the gravity of the violation, the size of the business, the good faith of the employer, which is evaluated on the basis of safety and health programs, and the employer's history of previous violations. They'll also look at whether the violation involves injury to an employee less than 18 years of age. If that happens, the penalty, I think it's going to be more than the $13,000, but they're looking at all these things, and they have a slide scale of how they come up with your actual penalty amount. So this is penalties for serious violations from 2012 to 2018. North Carolina is in the blue, and the rest of the U.S., it's averaged out in the orange. So if you look at 2018, the average penalty for a serious violation in North Carolina was $1,772. The average for the rest of the U.S. is $2,729. All right, so a couple tips. Inspections may last several days, so you want to plan accordingly. Require inspectors to comply with establishment safety rules. These are safety professionals, and they should be aware of most safety protocols, but if you have specific things that are specific to your facility, make sure that they're complying with your safety policies. Take note of what the inspector documents. Do not stage events. You don't want to create an image of your company that's not really what it actually is. You don't want to send everyone home. A lot of people will say, you know, I'm just going to have everybody stop working. If that happens, it's the inspectors know this, and they will either conduct their inspection, or they're going to plan to come back with, you know, as an unexpected visit. Do not destroy or tamper with evidence. And so to wrap it up, ensure you understand the reason for OSHA's inspection and keep the scope narrow and focused and on those issues alone. OSHA penalties can add up and cost your business a lot of money. If you do receive citations, be proactive and show a good faith effort to abate those issues. Negotiations are more likely to have favorable outcomes if you are willing to work with OSHA and to show that you're willing to correct the things that could be that they see as wrong. Document everything that happens during the investigation, during the closing conference, during the informal conference. Make sure that you're documenting everything. And then utilizing OSHA's consultative service program will build a positive relationship with OSHA. So if you do have a future issue that arises with OSHA, they're going to be somewhat familiar with your company, how your company is set up safety-wise. They're going to know that you have policies in place, and it's going to be easier on you if you do have something major happen down the road, just because that being familiar with your programs and some of the safeguards you have in place. So you want to work with OSHA. OSHA is not always, they're not always the boogeyman, because they are there to help protect your employees. And most OSHA inspectors are reasonable, but they're people as well. So they may be having a bad day, and it just so happens that bad day is on the day they plan to visit you. So try to work with OSHA. And if there's anything that comes up with OSHA citations that I may help you with, as far as a informal conference, I'd be more than willing to help out. And this is my contact information. So if you're looking for any more information from myself, you can reach out to me or your producer. So I really hope you all enjoyed today's presentation, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.